and scores! Great move by Davies. Well, this would be something. Oh! Ausgezeichnet!
Brian White chips. It'll make it!
Welcome back to another episode of Caps Cast presented by Whitecaps Fan TV. We are back after a little bit of we'll call it a vacation break. My lovely co-host Damien had to go back to England for some stuff, visit some family.
Yeah, a couple of pressing matters over there that I had to just go and deal with, but everything worked out okay, sort of.
So we're back. It was kind of nice little break. We've had a lot happen in our Whitecaps universe since we last jumped on. So why don't we kind of just like recap a little bit maybe. Let's take a look here. So we last spoke when it finished 0-0 against Dallas in September. Then what happened was we stopped recording while you took your vacation, and the Whitecaps decided to go on a losing streak. So I think it's safe to say that we're the good luck charm.
They did have the one half decent result against San Jose, but let's be honest, San Jose, bottom of the league. I think that was the game that mathematically eliminated them from the playoff. So they're going into that game with not really having much to play for. So that was sort of like, a game that we should have won. But the real downturn in form and downturn in luck, I suppose, came when we started with Houston Dynamo, which, again, a 1-1 draw, which these are the games I really feel that we should be winning. And I think for maybe about 65 minutes, 70 minutes of that Houston game, we were absolutely nowhere near it. We were so far off the pace as a team. It genuinely seemed like only one team wanted it until I think it was like, the 65th minute. And I think Vanny made a few subs, brought a couple of more experienced players on. I don't think Gold started that match.
No, and Brian White, I believe, was used as a sub too. So I think that's the game when me and you were chatting and you were like, can nobody put together a fucking pass?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember
it was,
the first 45 minutes was dreadful and you were in England at fucking 3 a.m. and you were like, well, glad I stayed up for this terrible first half. And then Brian White came on and saved us a point, which I think that's dropped points, to be honest. That shouldn't be like, oh, we salvaged a point. It's more that we dropped 3, or I guess we dropped 2.
Yeah, I feel that as well. I do think that the team that we've got at the moment, I think there's maybe only 3 teams in our league that we should be struggling against. And Houston Dynamo are not one of those teams. It's really not. So
then let's look at a big picture here. Is that game now I know we're already in October and we're kind of just trying to recap for everybody here. Is that game was September 18th, and then we played LA on the Saturday, like the Galaxy on the Saturday.
Yeah.
And then essentially on the 25th, we have the Canadian Championship.
Yeah, it's playing Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, right? It's a bit of a
So
crazy
my
schedule.
question to you then is, and I think this is an obvious answer, is that we both, I don't even know if this is a question, is that Vanny essentially put out the weaker 11 for the Houston game and the Galaxy game to save everybody for this Canadian Championship.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's what happened, especially when you look at the team that he put out for the LA game. It was honestly across the midfield there, like it was probably, and I hate to say it because I like to praise the players as much as possible, but I think that midfield that he put out for the LA game, considering there was not a single DP on the team on the like pitch, was our weakest midfield that he could possibly put out.
It's almost
I think
like
he started
leading.
with-
Yeah.
And he started with the Ocampo, I think it is, on the left wing, and I don't think that did very well. He very quick, very skillful, very good at getting forward. The defensive responsibilities for him to be playing at like left wing back, I don't think he's there yet. He's only young. He's only a kid. I think that part of his game really needs to be developed.
It's almost like he was like, let's play the first half, see what happened, and then I'll make my tactical substitutions in the second half to try and salvage a result. You know,
Yeah,
it's almost like, let's put out the weaker squad, which, I mean, it's not weaker, you know, but you're just missing our playmakers.
No, you're right. What you're saying, it is a weaker squad, Matt. Like if you're like on that game there, you were missing a lot of like what you would consider our best players.
Yeah.
It's a much weaker squad than what would be usually going out.
And it's almost like he was trying to reserve them for the Canadian Championship. But I mean, at this point, at what cost? Like, we're talking, let's call it 5 points on the table.
Do you
And
think that comes from the ownership though, down like even through like the general like manager in terms of like Axel Schuster, I think it is. Do you think that comes down and they're telling him, listen, we've got a chance here to qualify for the Champions League. Put all your effort into doing that because there's a chance, there's a good chance realistically that we might not win the MLS Cup, regardless of where we finish in them playoff fight spots. There are maybe 4 teams that I fancy over us. 2 of them in our league, in LA Galaxy and LAFC. And then I feel like you've got maybe Cincinnati and Miami. I think them 4,
even Columbus,
have got to be like the top 4 for the actual cup at the end of the season. So maybe it has come down from the ownership that just secure that Champions League, get us the money coming in that we are going to get from that, the TV rights, the anything, you know, just the money from the actual competition itself. It's all worth something to the club, right?
Totally. And I think there was probably the biggest target at the beginning of the season was the Canadian Championship.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
For me, as a supporter, and I think we spoke about this before we jumped on, is that like, I don't fancy it as a competition we should be going all in on. It's not a competitive competition, and that's not discrediting Toronto or Montreal, given that they in the past have been very competitive teams. I think it's more that the way the draw takes place is that we might not play an MLS side until the final. And in previous years, that's how it's been. I don't know necessarily if it is because, you know, they put it every team in the draw, or do they do like an East versus West kind of thing? And nobody out West, in theory, should be beating us. You know, I know it's happened in the past. You know, it has happened. But in my opinion, was it worth dropping points in Houston, potentially salvaging points against the Galaxy in order to win this game? And in all honesty, like, I don't even think, like, if we're looking at the Canadian Championship now and we're going to kind of like, you know, finish our like recap of what's happened, like, I don't even think it was that competitive of a game, in the sense that like we didn't look the best. Toronto have been struggling this season, and we've got the home field advantage. The the Southsiders did an excellent job of filling that side of the stadium.
Yeah.
Like it was packed in there, and it still goes to penalties.
Yeah, I suppose when you're saving all your best players like that, you'd be expecting more of a beating for Toronto, really, like more of a performance from them after having all that rest.
And to be honest, Bomer kept us in it. He stopped the penalty, saved the penalty, saves 2 penalties in the shootout, like in the penalty shootout.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't necessarily like a dominating performance where, you know, we won 3-4 nothing and you're like, okay, yeah, this rest was worth it. Like it just like nothing clicked. And like in my opinion, I'm like, well, shit, we left 2 points on the table against Houston. And I know probably going into LA to play the Galaxy was like a very tall order given how in form they are. But it's like, could you have salvaged a point there had you not done this like Mickey Mouse tactics?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think, see, even going into the playoffs, sir, if Vanny is able to put out basically the strongest side that we've got, which contains the likes of Ali Ahmed, Ryan Gold, Kubas, Armstrong, all starting. You know, somebody who I give a lot of shit to at the beginning of this podcast, but I really think towards the end of the season he's come on leaps and bounds. Pedro Vite.
Because he listens to us.
Must do, man. Like, he's fucking like paying attention to something, I tell you, because like I really do think in the last few games, over the course of like the last 7 weeks, he has really started like playing and picking up. And maybe it was just that it takes him a while in the season to get like going and get like into gear, which is only young as well. I think he's only 22.
Yeah. He's still in the like under 22 initiative that we have, like in our structure.
Yeah, so I think he would be included in my team though, which it's harsh because like that means like maybe Berhalter misses out. I think Berhalter has been fantastic as well. Well, I don't know.
And this is the point that I think we should be making on this isn't this not a good thing that we have so many players that are that competitive that we can't fit them into an 11? You know, we've sat here weeks ago and been like, our defensive line is the best in the MLS because we have 5 or 6 defenders that we can slot in at any given time and still be very confident in this. Now, like our midfield is like that, where, okay, now we've got a really strong midfield. Anybody should be able to slot in and get that job done. And then I think almost now is that we could look at our forwards and our strikers and been like, okay, is our strikers have enough competition to elevate their game? Because clearly in the midfield, it's working.
Yeah.
But I mean, so obviously, spoiler alert, we win the Canadian Championship.
But I do want to say as well, Bulmer in that got the young Canadian player of the tournament and the MVP, which, like, considering he's only the backup keeper for the Whitecaps, that's quite impressive. Like that, it shows how good he was, because even throughout the tournament, there he had been very good.
Well, like, okay, I want to touch on this because I've read this a lot too, and I know I texted you about this. Okay. There's been a lot of talk that do we move on from Takaoka? Bomer has this incredible run in the Canadian Championship. Do we move on from Takaoka? Do we use target allocation money to buy down Kubas that frees up another DP spot? Okay. Let's look at who Bomer played in the Canadian Championship. Okay.
Yeah.
What sides did he play? He played Toronto in the final. Fantastic. I'm not knocking his performance against Toronto FC. Like, that was a class performance. Previous to that was Pacific FC. Okay. We meet them in the semifinals.
Cavalry, I think, before them.
I'm just trying to scroll back to it, and yeah, and then it's Cavalry. So at what point? Oh yeah, he can cut it in the MLS for us. Why is this talk started? That we need to move on from Takaoka. We've got Bomer. We've got a gem. Look how good he was in the Canadian Championship. Like, man, he played Cavalry Pacific and finally got a chance against the first MLS side. Not knocking his performance because it was fantastic. But how could you argue that he should be our number one?
I suppose it depends on how you look at it, right? Do people look at it from the perspective of putting him in as number one, bringing in a second choice keeper to back him up? That's like a minimum wage entry sort of thing. I think the minimum wage in the MLS at the moment is like 98,000 US. So we could potentially bring another one in. Man, even go into the draft and look to grab a keeper from the draft. Do you know what I mean?
So let's
bring that person in. And like you said, then use the target allocation money, buy down Kubas, so then you've got another slot there for a DP that you can.
Man, this is crazy talk to me. This is crazy talk to me.
But buy down Kubas and bring in a striker, because for me, if come the end of the season here, I honestly think that's what I'd do. I'd be looking to buy down Kubas. Damir Krylak, he's got to go.
Oh, he's gone. Like
Fafa Pico, if I like Pico, he's done very well this season. If he wants to go back to the East Coast at the end of the year,
well,
let him go.
So there's a little thing with Fafa right now. Is in his contract, he's 1 goal contribution away from, I guess, activating an option in which the Whitecaps would re-sign him.
Okay, well, even that though.
So
even if we sign him,
I don't think we move on from Fafa. I think he stays regardless.
I don't know, because if we sign him and then he's actually tied to the club again for another year, does that not mean we're then able to sell him for general allocation money?
I mean, we could probably break into specifics, but I guess it would depend what his contract is, right?
Yeah, because I think there's a few teams that would take him because I think he's like quite good. Yeah, like even Toronto, man. I think Toronto would take him. Like he'd do well in that Toronto team.
See, I don't think to move on from Fafa. I don't think to move on from Takaoka. I think this is the exact predicament that we were in like 2017 when Usted moved on. And I'm trying to Google it now, but obviously it's not leaving. Remember we had the New Zealand keeper come in. He was the second choice keeper. He did really... Sorry?
I thought it was really bad.
It was the exact same situation. He was our number 1 keeper through that Canadian Championship run. I think it was the first Canadian Championship we did win. And then Usted moves on. We move him to a number 1 choice, and it was terrible.
Yeah, I do. I remember vaguely after Usted though, like that we went.
We've struggled. We've still struggled, essentially until we got Judas and Max Crepeau. We've struggled with keeping.
Man, I know that he is fucking Judas and he is like fucking awful and just everything we don't want now. But in the time that we had him,
fantastic.
I genuinely think he was up there with like in the top 3 in the MLS. Like the saves that Crepeau was pulling off on a weekly basis were out of this world.
And it's really funny because I've been like, obviously we'll get to this shortly, is that he makes his return to BC Place with Portland. And I was scrolling through Instagram and I was seeing like a lot of like, not hate, but it was like, I will always support Max Crepeau in a Canadian team, in a Canadian national team kit. It's just the way he left Vancouver was that.
Yeah.
It was so abrupt. It was, Dos Santos is out. Like, I'm going with him. You know, like Dos Santos kind of brought him in, and then
from Montreal, right?
He was such a good keeper for us. Like, he was so good for us. And I think it was just the abruptness of him leaving the club that really kind of got to the nerves of everybody. But the thing is that, you know, when he puts on that Canadian national team kit, I'm so glad he's there.
Oh yeah,
So
me too.
it's kind of funny that it's like I'll support him when he puts on the national team kit, but like when he's against us, like it's not happening.
Man,
I think this
honestly,
is sorry.
I think you're touching on the realms of like
Oh yeah.
English football support in there, like in a way that same sort of thing. Like if Saka is wearing an Arsenal top, fuck that guy, like right off. Do you know what I mean? Like I despise him. The moment he puts on an England top, it is like you would fucking die on your sword for him. Like
And
he is one of your own.
this is
right
how
away.
football supporters always are. This is exactly how I am too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think it's the same kind of thing, but we'll get to that in a minute here. But so I think keeping has always been like our weak spot since we've had Usted. We kind of had that like almost renaissance with Kripo. And we've got a gem in Takaoka that I don't think I really think that any talk of moving on from him should be just shut down right away.
What if the option was to let Tak go, buy down Kubas, and then for the DP, bring in a renowned goalkeeper, like somebody with like Champions League experience and things, like somebody that
I
might
don't
be coming
think so,
towards the
man.
end of their career, but
Man,
he has like a few good seasons left. And I'm like, what if like this is obviously a fucking shot in the dark because it won't happen. But with his injury that he's just had for Barcelona, what if somebody like Ter Stegen, whatever he is, but if that sort of level player becomes available and you can get him to come over to the Whitecaps and actually join, is that not something the club should be looking at if a player of that caliber becomes available at the end of the season sort of thing?
Okay, well, now you're talking like Ter Stegen or somebody like that. I don't think there's a keeper that I would replace Takaoka with unless it was a well-renowned international keeper. Like I wouldn't. There's no talk of like Boehmer replacing him, in my opinion. There's none of this. Like I think the team is very good with where we're at, and it's just all going to come down to tactics. And like let's dive in here now, because this is kind of like a good segue. Is that basically, how do we put this? Is that we had a chance to clinch the Cascadia Cup and kind of push on to top four. And so when me and you started this podcast, we kind of started during the transfer window when we're like, okay, what are the non-negotiables for the season? One of them was the Canadian Championship, which, okay, like let's check that off.
Yeah.
And now your non-negotiable, which I also am aligned with, is the top four, and kind of pushing a little bit into the playoffs. I think you're 100% correct in that, like, yeah, we're probably not going to win the MLS Cup. If we can, obviously me and you will sit here and support until that happens, that, you know, we are mathematically out of the playoffs or eliminated from the playoffs. But I think realistically is that like it's probably not going to happen, but we at least want to have a good showing in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, yeah, fully.
So, okay, Portland come to town, and I guess let's kind of paint the picture here, is that we were 5 points up on Portland. Portland are just above the cut line in terms of getting into that like knockout playoff. And we're on the outside looking into top four. We really are. We have a game in hand. Now that kind of the dust is settled, that game in hand is against LAFC. We'll get to that. And essentially too is that we mathematically could have clinched the Cascadia Cup, which is just a supporter cup, but I think it is a lot of bragging rights.
Yeah, it still means a lot to the fans, especially like the safe side as well. We sit.
Oh,
and, like,
totally.
stand in the,
Like, I'm
the
not
games,
discrediting.
Like, it's massive to them, yeah.
So, BC Place, obviously me and you couldn't make it, but I read that attendance was like 25,000. It was one of the top 5 this weekend in the league.
Nice.
So let's kind of dive into this. I guess we had a better perspective because we were at home.
Yeah, it's a bit easy to see what's going on, like on the like when
it's
you're
a
at
lot
the stadium,
easier
you
to
miss
like
a little bit
have
even
an
there.
opinion. Yeah. Okay, so the game kicks off straight away and we're up 1-0. Brian White scores 3 minutes in, and good old Phil Neville has a meltdown on the touchline.
Well, even man, the goal though that we scored in the first 3 minutes, I really thought it was going to set the tone for the entire match because
Yeah.
Oh, it was beautiful, man. Like, Blackman picks it up in his own half. He almost like goes one way. Their attacker goes one way. He goes the other way. Their attacker keeps going the one way that he was going. He brings it back onto his left foot and he spews an unbelievable ball over the top crossfield pass that lands on Berhalter's fucking foot like it was a magnet. Like, unbelievable ball. Like, if like you see this sort of like that level of ball in the Premier League and stuff, like it's not something that you often see in the MLS. Like, it was a very, very good ball over the top. And then obviously Berhalter gets down the wing a little bit, fires a very nice low cross straight into the box. And this for me, I think in the whole time that I've seen Levante Johnson play, it was probably the best thing he's ever done. And he just dummies the ball. Like, just lets it go, steps straight over it. It goes all the way through to Brian White, who applies a delicate finish that trickles through the keeper's legs. I genuinely think it was one of, like, the better goals we've scored. Not in terms of, like, a curler from, like, 30 yards out, but the build-up, the little dummy, and the little delicate finish. Yeah, for me, that was, like, an excellent goal to score.
Yeah, it was probably the best thing we've seen Levante Johnson do all season, which was not touch the ball. Like,
yeah, I think that's like one position that we really need a more adequate like backup player for. Like, I don't think he is at MLS level.
Yeah.
I hate to say it because I do like the guy. I think he's really puts his heart like out there on the pitch every time he plays, but it is just
it's not enough.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, and that's not to say that like he can't go on loan within the Canadian Premier League or whatever, and get first team minutes there. I think he'd be like a good fit in somewhere like Pacific, staying locally. Yeah. Maybe even, I don't know, like dropping down to Whitecaps 2, if that's an option. Or, you know what, maybe the club just moves on from him. If we can find an adequate replacement.
We've seen it with other players that have come through, like the academy at the Whitecaps as well, who, like, look at Theo Bair. He left. Yeah. I think he went to, like, Sweden or somewhere.
Yeah, it was like Malmo.
Yeah, now he's, like, in the Canadian national team, and while he was at the Whitecaps, I'll be honest, I really didn't see that happening.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the development and, like, the experience of, like, being under a different coach with different tactics opened him up a little bit more into a better player.
Yeah, like I'm not writing. I'm not
coaches.
I'm not writing him off. Like, I'm not saying his career is done. I'm just saying that like maybe it is time to move on.
Yeah.
Explore different options if he can develop into a great like an actual striker. Good for him. But I just don't think it's cutting it where it is now.
No.
If they want to explore a loan, that's one thing. If we move on, I don't think there's going to be a lot of broken supporting hearts.
Like, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
But yeah, so he does probably the best thing he's done in his Whitecaps career, which was leave the ball. And like you said, Brian White delicately finishes it, and we're up 1-0 3 minutes in, and now me and you're sitting there regretting not making the trip to Vancouver.
Yeah. And then it wasn't even just that, man. There was like a few good opportunities in the like next 10, 15 minutes after that to actually get a couple more goals. I think it was Fafa Pico that had a free header from about 8 yards out and heads it high, wide, and over, like way over. Like it was a very poor header, really. And even with Fafa, though, I'd like to touch on that. I don't know if he's been a bit overplayed for his age. He looked tired.
It's a lot of games that he's been involved in too, right?
Yeah.
I know me and you were kind of saying at the start of the hour that like, oh, did we play a B squad? Unfortunately, in that same sentence, that means involving Fafa quite a bit. Because obviously Brian White was in concussion protocol, so we didn't have that striker. And Damar Krylak's not cutting it in terms of pace. So Fafa gets the call. Fafa and Levante Johnson really did fill that void up top for us. And like you said, like that could just come down to being used and involved too much.
Yeah, I think so. And I will say it has been very, very nice over the past couple of weeks to see Brian White like coming back after the concussion protocol. I really think he adds just another dimension to the attack. Like not having him on the pitch is a huge loss.
It is.
That's honestly where I'd go back to. If we can get rid of Tack, get a different goalkeeper in, and use some of the money to buy down Kubas, we could do with another very good striker. Like an international level striker is what we need.
I mean, the way I'd come back and argue this with you is that the way Brian White plays is he's an out and out target striker. We've seen him kind of struggle when they almost played two strikers. I think that's why Krylak never really got a look. Because I think at the beginning of the season there was an experiment of like, oh, let's run Krylak and White together.
Didn't work.
It didn't work. I think that Brian White is an out and out target striker that will make the runs and get on the end of balls. But I don't think he works well in a strike partnership.
No, in fact, the only player that he really works well with, I feel, in that like when they play him as two up top, is Ryan Gold. But maybe
because he's making the passes.
Yeah. That goes back to him being more of a midfielder, right, than a striker. So he's sort of dropping back anyway and letting White run on. Yeah. That makes sense.
That's what it is, right? Is that like, and I think maybe this is going to kind of boil down to that, like, okay, obviously writing's on the wall. The supporters want to move on from Levante Johnson. Is there somebody adequate in the Whitecaps too? And I always butcher the name, but that like Lafleur or whatever he's called.
Chateau.
Potentially, it's a French name.
Yeah, it is. I think it's I can't pronounce his first name, but I know it's Le Chateau or something. The surname.
Yeah, and I think like somebody like that could potentially be in line to kind of fulfill that like second strike. I think that might be more the route to go. But I'm just standing on that hill of protecting Takaoka because I don't want to go through another goalkeeper debacle. Like years of this already.
I don't understand that. Because like the goalkeeper, a lot of teams will say, right, like if you've got a good goalkeeper, it's like your foundation of a house, basically. Between your goalkeeper and your defense. I do understand what you're saying. I don't know, man. I just feel like Bulmer might be worth a shot. And you know what? If we have one fucking season what's like terrible, so be it, man.
I'm sick of these terrible seasons.
No, like we've got into the playoffs for like the past couple of seasons now. We've won the Canadian
Man,
Championship.
I'm still bitter that we let Usted walk. Like, what do you mean? Like, I think I've
Yeah.
sat through enough of this like goalkeeper nonsense that finally we've got a keeper. And the thing is too is when Crapo left, I was like, that's it, because he was really like a cat almost. You know, how many times did he bail us out?
Oh yeah.
And then we got Takeoka, and I feel like he's kind of like you said, he's the foundation of that defense, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I do get it if we do need to get into the business of like, okay, we need to buy down Cubas, you know, how do we I mean, I think there is going to be conversations here relatively soon, like how do we keep Gald?
Yeah. I think we get very lucky with Gold at the moment because from everything I've read about his like private life outside of football, him and his wife love Vancouver.
Yeah.
So, and I think being happy in the place that you live is a huge part. Mate, look at all the players that go over to fucking Saudi Arabia that aren't willing to accept the lifestyle and like the culture of Saudi Arabia. They
Because
go
the
over there
money
for a
brings them
payday,
there, right?
and then they're like, "Yo, I need to get out of here because it's not." I don't know. If you're not happy in the place that you work in, it's enough to push you away, right?
Well, let's put a pin in that because I do want to bring that up, but I want to finish this recap first because I want
Yeah.
to question you about this. So then obviously we concede in the 43rd minute, which was the same goal was essentially scored about 5 minutes before, but it was ruled offside. And then, sure fucking enough, the same identical buildup happens, and Portland draw level.
Yeah, it was a bit. I don't know. You'd think after the team had just been stung and then saved by the linesman, you'd think they'd be a little bit more fucking aware as to what is going on and understand that, you know what, this might happen again, especially when the build-up is exactly the same.
Identical.
Like all the players that were running exactly the same position. It was, yeah, wild. Like the fact that they were able to score an identical goal to the one that was just disallowed. I can't imagine what fucking Vanny must have said when he got him in at halftime. Because watching that on TV, like God knows what he was like going through watching that happen live in the stadium. Like literally a carbon copy of the goal that was disallowed.
And that's what I appreciate about Vanny is how animated he is. So I know that like he's probably not putting on a show and that he's in the changing room like throwing shit around water bottles and being like, get your fucking head out of your asses. Because
Yeah.
that is a very poor goal to concede. And I think that's where a lot of credit should be due to Vanny is that how animated he is that I genuinely believe that carries over into training, into the change room, into halftime. I don't think he goes in and like says, "Well, good try," you know, like let's go get him.
No. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
And
I
then
think
yeah,
in that
like
game, though, go on, sorry.
Sorry, go on.
I think in the game though, it was so they had the back three right as well. In that game of Utvik, Veselinovic, and Blackman.
Yeah,
That's was how it was like touted to be. What I did notice a lot of the time is Raposo almost fell into like the left back spot, I guess. And that to me sort of threw things off a little bit. Like it left a bit of a big gap down the side. Pico, like I said earlier on, seemed tired and wasn't able to track back as much. And I think I might be wrong in this when I say it, but Raposo fell into the left-hand side though. If Blackman isn't on the pitch, am I right in saying that Utvik usually starts on the left side of the back three?
Yeah.
So I feel like asking him to go and play the right centre-back role, and then when Raposo was dropping in, it basically meant that Utvik then became a right back.
Yeah.
I don't think that really worked. I don't think Utvik is a right back. I think he's a centre back, a very good centre back, but I don't think he's a right back.
Yeah. Is
Like,
that he's playing out of
it doesn't work.
position. It's almost
honestly,
like if it's
think
like
about Prime Maguire. No, honestly, when Maguire was like awesome, like at Leicester and everything, if you'd have put him out to right back, you wouldn't have got a performance out of him because he's not got the legs. He's not got like the ability to do the job.
And I think that, like, I mean, we don't know what's going on in training, but if you're going to start Utvik on the right hand side, why are you not just dropping him to the bench and putting in Laborda?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why are you that dead set? Like, something had to be going on to play him that out of position.
Yeah, because you've got Albuni as well, who can also play on the right side, though. Who
wasn't
plays
even
very
named,
well.
and he wasn't even named to the match day squad.
Yeah, man, maybe there was something there. Maybe there was like a little bout of injuries going around because obviously Ali Ahmed wasn't in the squad. Gold
Yeah,
wasn't
so
in the squad.
I have that all kind of noted here. But that's
Okay.
kind of like looking forward. But yeah, so do you have anything else for this game you want to cover before we kind of dive into?
Not too
Getting-
much. I mean, like, obviously we had I think in the second half we were very unfortunate not to win the game. I feel like we were the better team in the second half. Brian White had that opportunity there. He got put through. He was 1-on-1. I think it was around the 55th minute.
Yeah, twice he was
funny,
through.
man. He slots it around the keeper, and you can see it in him that he thinks that ball is in the net, and he has almost started running off the other way, and he's just watching it, and it just dings off the post, and it was
Straight back to
you
Great
bastard.
Poe.
And then the same thing again. I guess not the same, but in the 90...
But it was ruled offside.
Was it ruled offside, that one?
There was one that was ruled offside, and the one that hit the post he was onside.
Oh, okay. And then you had the one in the 90, I think, like, third minute, where literally, I think it was like one of the last kicks of the game, Vite, just literally passes the ball off to the left of himself. Kubas runs onto it and fucking strikes it. This isn't a player that we're used to striking, by the way. It was a magnificent strike, but unfortunately, it was on the outside of the post.
Skims the outside of the post.
Yeah, like, I do think there was a lot of promise and a lot of just a lot of missed chances, I guess, like where we could have won that game. It was very, very, very close, I feel.
It's just unlucky.
Yeah, just bad luck, yeah.
Bad luck. But I guess we move on.
Yeah. Onwards to Seattle tomorrow night.
Okay, so I want to circle back to this Ryan Gauld that we kind of tabled.
Okay.
So Ryan Gauld gets named to the Scottish national team again today. So that kind of comes out this morning. And they are going to be playing on October 12th. They play Croatia, and then the 15th against Portugal. So I think I want to go back to the question now, is that if Ryan Gauld is now getting on the bounce national team call-ups, how do we keep him in Vancouver without essentially forming a human wall and blocking the plane from taking off, if it gets to that? And I think you made a really, 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 really good point and a strong argument that, like, everything we've seen in, articles, they're obviously tabloids and stuff, that he loves being in Vancouver. I guess, like, him and his wife love the, mountains and a beach within 30 minutes of each other. There's that article that came out a couple months ago. Maybe it was a couple months ago now, that, he's much happier here than he was in Portugal. Obviously, things like that. So it's like, now, obviously, me and you sat here and we're like, why is he not getting call-ups? Why is he not getting call-ups? Now he's getting call-ups, and it's like, uh-oh, this is getting real.
Yeah, I think we did well by tying him down until 2027 anyway.
Yeah.
So that was a good contract to tie him to. Which, again, you know, if push comes to shove and he really does well for Scotland and he gets recognised and people are like, oh wow, this guy's actually really good and somebody wants to come and take him, providing that we get the appropriate amount of money for him and the money that we get back, I know it'd be a massive, massive loss to the club, but if you have I just feel as though if you've got the opportunity to go back to Europe and play in maybe the Premier League, I don't think you stay in the MLS. I think that is too much of a draw to go and play in that league. It's arguably the most competitive league in the world. It's violent. There's aggression. There's just like the
everything.
love from the fans. Like one thing that I noticed in the that interview that he did, he said it's weird because he said he misses the abuse that he used to get playing in Europe because
Yeah.
he was at like a stadium, I think he said it was Colorado. They're lining up to come out. And he said, oh, somebody in the crowd, like one of the fans from Colorado, literally shouted to him, hey, we're going to beat you today, but I hope you really enjoy the city. And he was like, what has just been said to me? Like, that's weirdly the nicest thing that anybody could have said, like, as an away fan. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's a level of, I want to almost say shithousery in England and in, like, the Premier League that is unmatched. So I think it's got its pulls, but at the same time, if you are happy somewhere and your family are happy, your family are thriving, you're earning a decent wage. I think he's on like what 48,000 a week.
Yeah, something like that.
It's a very, very, very good wage. Like, if you're happy and you're being called up to the Scotland team, you're getting the international recognition that you've like rightfully deserved for the last like 3 years, realistically. I know, man. There's a lot of pros and like cons almost as to like why you'd go and why you'd stay. Like you'd literally have to fucking write down the list and just compare it because I know for me, being from England and being from the UK, there isn't much that would make me move back there after being here, after seeing the country, seeing like how Canada is. There isn't much that would actually make me move back to the UK now because this place is amazing. Like the country is amazing. Everything about BC has come to the best place in Canada to live. And they're doing the one thing that is the hardest thing to do in Canada, make money. Like if it was like a regular person struggling to like make a bit of money, like some of the guys that might only be on the team earning 100,000, because 100,000 now doesn't go that far in Canada anymore.
Yeah.
Like then if they're looking at like a contract in England where they're going to earn the same, 100,000 in England goes a hell of a lot further than 100,000 a year here.
So
yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to come at it with a different perspective because I think you've made a lot of really good points. My thing is that if I'm a footballer, what do you want to win? And it's trophies, right?
Yeah.
You obviously, the national team call up is kind of like the cherry on top. You know, there was a lot of articles when there was that whole like, oh, he could potentially like change nationalities to Canada. And he kind of was in interview saying like, oh, you know, that ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. I'd love to play for Scotland, but like that ship has sailed. So everyone was kind of like, he's going to switch nationalities because he would walk into the Canadian national team. Let's be honest here, right?
Oh yeah, what like an improvement it'd be for the team as well there to have like a player of that quality going in.
So now he's getting the recognition that he deserves, has always deserved. And I think you've made a lot of good points here, but for me, I'm like, okay, maybe there is a time and place when he needs to move on from the club. You know, obviously he's going to want to win trophies. There's going to be things thrown his way that are going to be tempting, you know?
Yeah.
Is that I think Axel Schuster should have this drilled in his mind to win now. Not talking the Canadian Championship. I think I've been pretty outspoken that like I don't believe that is a sign of progression that our club is making. 3 on the bounce, fantastic. Who did we play to get there? Ugh.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying with that, yeah.
And I'm not knocking the 3 on the bounce. I think Vanny did a really very bang up job with that. That is very impressive, very ballsy that the club also had Sam Adekugbe posing for the jersey launch with like 3 that they had already been marketing that.
Yeah.
So okay, the MLS Cup is going to be arguably the hardest trophy right now in terms of like we've got 1 month out to prepare for it, right?
Yeah.
We're going to look ahead of the games here in a minute, but I think that Schuster and co need to look at the other competitions. Okay, Champions League, we need to do better. We've been in that competition now. Oh yeah, 2 years on the bounce, right? This year we were eliminated by Tigres. The year before, we made it to the round of 16 versus LAFC.
Yeah.
So we need to, and I'm not saying Champions League is going to be the easiest thing to win. I'm not saying any of these competitions are the easiest thing to win, but we need to start progressing in this.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because at some point, Ryan Gauld is going to walk away from the team in terms of maybe he does stick it out to 2027, loves Vancouver, renews, ends his career here. There's still going to have to be a life beyond him.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
right,
whether it's in 3 years or like 7. It is
right?
what it is.
Whether it's like a Russell Tybert where he goes down and just kind of retires with the club, is that I think when Ryan Gauld looks back on his career that this is a very big missed opportunity because we need to win now. We have the squad to win now. I think it's more just execution and management of like the squad in general.
Yeah.
So that's how I think we keep him, is that everything you've said has created this like bubble where he loves it, you know? But now let's get onto the on field. Is that okay? Is the club progressing in the way I want? Because maybe he moves to Seattle. Seattle's very similar to Vancouver. Maybe he wants to go into Oregon. Portland is very similar to Vancouver. I'm tired of the cold. Let's keep going down the coast to like LA, you know? Maybe
That's
not
thing.
LAFC, right? And these are clubs that would make room for him. Like him in the midfield with Marco Reus and Puig from the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Like those are 2 big international players that he could link up with, right? Okay. So now we've got this globe, this environment that Ryan Gauld loves, and that we need to have an on-field performance.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Essentially now is that we've got 4 games left in the season, and now let's kind of break this down. So we're recording this on, what fucking day are we on? October 1st.
Yeah.
So Seattle comes up the I-5, and we play Seattle at home tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I read a very interesting thing is that I'm just going to pull up the tweet here from that I saw. So Vanny has obviously like a pre-match press conference today with an injury report. So Stuart Armstrong, he's going to be out with a calf injury. Let's kind of throw that out there before me and you see the lineup tomorrow and lose our goddamn mind. Ali Ahmed is questionable with a quad injury. And then I think the biggest red flag here is that Ryan Gauld is questionable with a knee injury. Don't know the extent of it, if this is Knox, if this is pre-existing. So, okay. So we win tomorrow. That probably seals up the Cascadia Cup. I don't know the exact standings and things like that. Assuming that seals it up. And then we've got a really, really quick turnaround and play Minnesota on Saturday.
Yeah.
So, okay, Seattle are 3 points ahead of us. Minnesota are 2 points behind us. So we're kind of in this sandwich here. Assuming that Seattle obviously wants to play top 4, this is a derby game, and this is going to be a very tightly contested match tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think this goes to the wire. I think this is very winnable for us tomorrow, which would put us, I mean, I don't know what the tiebreakers are, but we do have, I don't know what the tiebreakers are in the MLS table, but that'll put us level with Colorado for in that 4th place kind of window.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the 2 games that I think, looking ahead here, mean the most to us is this week in general. The 2 games this week. So now let me pose this, because I know we're getting to the top of the hour here. The LAFC game, now we know that it's an international break. Ryan Gauld gets called up to Scotland, so he's out. Assuming the usual suspects go too, in the sense of Ali Ahmed, Pico, Adekube, love him or hate him, Cubas. They're all gone for arguably our biggest match of the season, because that is also the end of the season at BC Place before postseason. Obviously, the Whitecaps have clinched the playoffs. It's just more of where we land,
which is so massive, though.
It's massive, absolutely massive, because this could be these 4 games. I know that when we started looking at this a couple weeks ago, is that we kind of dismissed these games, being like, "Oh, we'll be top 4 by then." Vanny's fumbled the bag.
It is just a mixture of the games that have come up, and I suppose injuries as well. Injuries, games that have come up, and
internationals.
Bad management to an extent.
And that's fine. I'm not saying Vanny out. I'm still fully behind Vanny. But so I just think this run-in has turned into an uphill battle.
No, I'd agree with that. I think we need to secure top 4. I feel like we need at least 7 points. And I mean, that's going to be cutting it close. And the 7 points, ideally, would need to be taking 3 off LAFC and 3 off Seattle. At a minimum, they're the 2 teams that I really think we need to be beating if we want to get top 4.
Yeah.
If we beat them 2, draw potentially Minnesota, and take a loss, I think we get top 4. I think we need 7 points. It'll be very, very tight and very close, and it's going to depend quite a lot on what other teams do. But I think top 4 is attainable, because even looking at that, if we do the game in hand, it'd put us on to 50 points if we were to win, right, against LAFC, which leaves us even with Colorado and Seattle. We play Seattle, so that's basically a 6-pointer. That could potentially jump us above Colorado as well, even if Colorado win, because Colorado's goal difference is shit.
Yeah.
So
now I kind of read something interesting earlier too about the LAFC game and I mean, we can discuss it closer too, but it's this is now the perfect time of why BC Place should be turf, because is Giroux gonna play?
Maybe not. But also, mate, I don't like from what I've been reading about LAFC, he's not had the impact that they thought he was gonna.
No.
No, he's not like for an impact player, like remember in that first season when Gold came into the squad? And it was kind of like a breath of fresh air for the squad, and you were like, holy shit, who is this guy? Like, he can do it all. And he's like really transforming the team. I almost think LA were looking at that to like almost galvanize their team and really push them for like the top of the league. And I don't think it's worked out quite as well as they'd hoped.
No, I don't think so either. But I haven't really kept up with LAFC, so I can't even say, but I know that when Giroux was debuting, is that they were like, oh, we're going to slowly get him up to speed for the run-in and then the playoffs. But I mean, like, I can't speak to if he's been playing or not. I have no idea. But I just thought it was
major.
I thought it was quite funny that they were like, oh, now the turf is about to finally pay its dividends of like not having internationals play on it.
No, it doesn't make sense. I do think that's going to be something that they'll have to address in the next year or so, like maybe change that out, because the big stars coming are like it fills the stadium.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think after this like fiasco with Miami not bringing anyone and a lot of Whitecaps fans, and I'll be honest, man, when that happened, I just want to say when that happened, I really didn't see it as a big deal. I was like, how the fuck can the club control like who comes? In hindsight, thinking about it, there are probably a lot of people that traveled from all across Canada.
So many people. Man, there was so many people that traveled to watch that.
So
and I
sort of understand it from that perspective now. And
I still think the best thing I ever heard was the guy that sat behind us, because they announced this. I don't know who this guy was, but God, do I think about you every week. Is that they, they announce, oh, this is the largest MLS attendance. And this fucking guy whispers or shouts his friend, that's how we celebrate the largest attendance, is getting smashed up the Miami B team.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It was, it was quite funny to hear that, like, in the stands at the same time. It was kind of like fucking a little bit humbling, let's say, because then you were kind of like, yeah, we did. We just got fucking beat off this, like, about any of the stars in front of the fucking record crowd.
The record crowd, what do? We get celebrate by getting smashed up the Miami B team.
Yeah.
So regardless, so we've got a tough run in here. So I guess, okay, so we're back. We're up and running. You're not leaving the country again. I'm leaving in November. So we're back for this month.
Yeah.
And then, so we'll be back next week. And I think the plan is we'll try tomorrow, Wednesday, to see what the attendance is like. But Wednesday, and so the Seattle game and the Minnesota game will be there for some fan TV as well. We'll get that up and running for everybody. We'll definitely be there. Actually, you know what? I'll just say it now. We'll be there for the next 3 games. Seattle, Minnesota, and LA. We'll be doing fan TV. We're back doing our weekly podcast, which we'll do on a Monday, as long as there's no stat holidays that fucking fuck us up again.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We're back and up and running for us, at least. So we'll see if the Whitecaps can at least get up and running to support us.
Yeah.
Who are up and running.
Yeah, let's see how it goes, like, over the next few weeks. Let's see if we can secure a top 4 place and like get that home advantage for the playoffs. Like that's what we all want, the fans.
So then I guess next Monday's episode we'll have a way better look, because we'll have 2 games and we'll have a way better outlook on where we're landing, and a lot less of this Doctor Strange multiverse that we can go through.
Yeah, it should be, right? Like coming back on Monday, we should know if we're gonna get top 4. Like if we fuck these next 2 games and take 0 points from them, I'd go as far as saying top 4 is done. Even if I honestly feel like if we get beat off Seattle tomorrow night, top 4 is going to be a real fucking like challenge.
Yeah, I think so too. But I mean, like you said, we'll address that next Monday when we have a clearer picture. But I think the one stat we can pull is that the last episode we recorded, the Caps smashed San Jose, and then when we went on our little in-season vacation, we didn't get a single result. So
Yeah,
let's hold on to that stat.
yeah, we're back. So are the Caps.
So I guess that's all from us. Till next time then.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Caps Cast presented by Whitecaps Fan TV. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram listed below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.